everybody. This is K Swan from Inspired by K Swan, and I want to welcome you to This is Girl Talk with some of my friends. The month of March is Women's History Month, and so this month commemorates and highlights women who have contributed to society. And so I just want to bring on a few of my friends just to have some girl talk. And so my guest today is the one and only Jessica Johnson. And I'm going to bring her on right now. Jessica!
Hey,
This this is Jessica Johnson. She has a wonderful podcast, Listen Up Jess. And so just listen up with Jess. Yes. Okay. So just briefly, just tell us, who you are, just a little bit about who you are, and then let's just talk about being a woman. Okay.
Okay. Yes. So yes, I have a platform called Listen Up with Jess, where I do podcast episodes that are Christian based, and we talk about real life issues that everyday Christians face. So we're talking about relationships, we're talking about self-care, we're talking about mental health, and all from a Christian perspective, and the things that I've went through and discovered, and I just feel led by the Holy Spirit to share. And so my platform is really just encouraging people to become better versions of themselves by doing the self-work and doing it with God.
That is awesome. Yeah. So how important do you feel it is to share the things that you've gone through, with people? How important really is it?
Carly, it's so important. Here's the thing, because so many of us, we struggle with the same things. It's just we're silent. So it's not, our stories are not the same, but they're very similar, very similar. You know what I'm saying? And so what I get free when I can be transparent, and then I start to be vulnerable and I just share, because then when I hear another sister or a brother and say like, dang, like that really encouraged me. Like I was going through that too. Then I'm like, now they are feeling free. They don't feel alone. And I think what happens is like, we just start to isolate ourselves and think I'm the only one struggling with this, problem, this addiction or this sin or whatever. And it's like, no, we are all out here battling. And so I think it's so freeing when we can just be transparent and share, and then you can inspire somebody else to share their story. And that's how healing starts. So I think that's why it's so important to just share your stuff.
Yeah, I know it. Listen, I agree 1,000%.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So this month, March, is Women's History Month. And so let's talk about just like in the last year, what as a woman in society in this here pandemic and just all that's going on, first of all, what have you been doing? And then what's a lesson that you have learned in the last 365 days?
Oh, child. First of all, 2020 was, for me, a hot mess, but a healthy hot mess. I would say that, because through the hot mess, I was healing, and I think that's what was happening. I didn't like it, but definitely it was healing. And so I think when, just throughout all of 2020, and also just seeing like the recent election, I think I saw a lot of liberation with the women, right? We saw Stacey Abrams getting it together here in Georgia. And I'm out here in Georgia, and I was like so excited to see how she was impacting Mayor Keisha. I love me some Keisha out here. She tries to get us together in Atlanta. We don't listen to her, but we try to get it together. And then we don't listen. We outside, Lord Jesus. And Kamala, come on. Made it to the White House. And so these women were so empowering. And then, of course, my good sis, so faithful, Michelle Obama, like our forever first lady. I remember watching her documentary. I think it was during the pandemic, or it was like, the beginning.
When I watched it, yes.
Girl, so inspired by it. I told myself, I was like, I need to watch this once a month to keep the momentum going for me, because I was really inspired how she is a woman of just motivation. Like she wants to truly motivate and encourage She's a
Yeah.
mentor to so many. Like, she really takes her mentorship. She launched that podcast. The podcast is amazing. And so a lot of her whole brand of becoming was inspirational for me, because I do believe I'm in my becoming stage, like, where I've gone through so much, and now I'm allowing these lessons to help shape me into the woman I am. And you're never going to get to this perfect point. Just, you're going, like, you
be becoming something.
always. And I love that. Because for me, I think I struggled with the perfectionism. And so I would think like, oh, there's going to come to a point where I just have it all together. And so Michelle reminded me, it don't matter who you are, you will forever be in this becoming stage, and embrace it. You know? So
yeah, that's true. So what is your most proudest moment or proudest accomplishment as it relates to a woman?
Yes, I would definitely say, so 2019, I had the opportunity to do a Listen Up with Jess speakers tour, where I spoke in the Atlanta public school system, and I spoke at, I think, about 5 different high schools in the metro city Atlanta. And these kids, woo child, there's some rough ones, but they embraced me. And especially, and it started off with just speaking to all high schoolers. And then I think the administrative saw that I had this passion for young girls. And so, I mean, it was to the point where I was in an auditorium with 1,700, plus high schooler girls, and they're listening to me speak and share my story and help motivate them. And so doing that motivational speaking tour, it just empowered me, like, because now I had women, like these young girls coming up to me on stage, like, can we take a picture with you? What's your social media? What's your podcast? Have you feeling like a little Beyonce? I'm like, girl, I'm nobody, and I'm sitting here. But I felt happy because they were able to see somebody that looked like them doing something that they were passionate about, right? And that, my story wasn't perfect. I shared with them the things that I went through in high school, how I was cutting up in the streets too. Okay? Probably if you remember now, child. You remember.
Listen. Okay, so let me just say this. I don't necessarily remember. I've heard you speak about it on your podcast. And I was listening like, where was she doing all of that? Because
it was really high school,
You were just really sweet, and I didn't realize the magnitude of what you were going through.
We were together mainly through like elementary and middle school, but when I went off to high school, I just wilded out. I think that's what it was. And so, but God turned it out for His glory, His good, my good. And so I think that's what was so, inspirational, was just to have young women be motivated by the story that I was sharing. And I was able to build connections with them. I did like one-on-one mentorships with them, and would check in. And to this day on social media, we're friends, and I, comment and all that stuff just to stay connected. And I think they just needed to see a different representation of a young black woman, right? You don't have to look a certain way. Like, I still can look young, cool, hip, and all that, but yet still have value, still have these standards, still have purpose, and, be, driven by that, and not be the status or, quote or whatever.
Right. So listen, guys, if you're just tuning in, my special guest today is Jessica Johnson. She has a wonderful podcast, Listen Up with Jess, and you're doing really well with that. I tune in, and I'm
trying. Yes.
So I want to wrap it up, but I do want to ask you, how do you, Jess, how do you plan to make history in your world?
How do I plan to make history?
Yes.
I think
to make history.
Yeah. So one of the things I plan to make history by trying to be intentional of breaking generational curses in my family. And so where there were just certain things just in relationships and in marriage and things like that, where I know, like, for me, I want to be intentional and not continue the same cycle, right?
Okay.
And so what does that look like for me being intentional in relationships with family, with my friends, with romantic partners, like
Mhm.
making sure that I'm doing relationships in a healthy way. I'm
Okay.
communicating healthy. And so that also means making history is creating boundaries, because my family didn't have boundaries. Like that just wasn't a thing. It was like, what is that? And so to see, for me, it's like, I'm going to establish those boundaries, and I want the generations after me, my daughter and their kids and their, know that, look, Mama Jess, she started having some boundaries and she took it serious, and she, took time for herself to heal herself so that she can be, better for her family to after her. So I think that's one way.
Yeah, that's beautiful, Jessica. That's beautiful. And
Yeah.
I think it's so important, one, to kind of know where you are and just acknowledge
Yeah.
that everything is not always perfect. Everything that we
Mm-mm.
thought was the case may not have
Right.
been.
Nothing been.
Accepting
Yes.
that is okay to accept that. It's
Mm-hmm.
okay to create that boundary. Still love you, but this
Yes.
here,
Yes. I'm
so.
doing it for love. Like, I'm doing it with love.
Right, right, right,
Yeah.
right. And for your own peace, right?
Yes, yeah. I think women, like, when it comes to women's history, right, we're the backbone to family, right? We're the backbone to our men, to our tribe, everything.
To this
And yet,
country.
to the country, let's be honest, to the country. We birthed you guys, like, we birthed the world, okay? And we sit here and we put so much on our back.
Yeah,
We're like breaking ourselves. Like, we're not taking the time. And I think one way is to take time to really practice that self-care,
yeah.
really know, because that's how you are able to preserve your life. Like, we have
Right.
women that are dying, right, because of stress and heart failure, all that, because we're not taking care of ourselves first. We want to take care of everyone else. And I think there should be a balance. And
Yeah.
I think for so long, the generations before us, our ancestors, they didn't know what self-care was. They didn't even know that's not a thing, taking care of them first so that they can be healthy for their family. So,
Right, right.
yeah.
Beautiful. Yes. So
Yes.
that's all for today.
Yes. That was fun.
I know it. Thanks for stopping by, Jessica. I'm gonna put
Yay.
your tag on there. Listen, you guys
Yes.
follow her on social media, Facebook
Yes.
and Instagram. Listen up with Jess. Go subscribe to her podcast.
Podcast on
Where is your
Apple. So it's on Apple iTunes podcast, or you can go to Spotify. It's on
okay?
Spotify podcast and Google Play. So,
Yes. So,
yeah.
so if you want some just real, authentic information, stories, experiences, tips, and
Yes.
tools, Listen Up with Jess is where you should go. So thank you so
Thank
much for
you.
stopping by.
Thank
We'll chat
you.
with you later.
All right. Bye.
Bye. All right, that is all I have for you today on Inspired by K Swan. Tune in sometime, maybe next week, maybe later on this week, for another one of my friends as we talk Women's History Month. All right, bye.